Greetings, Tony. Ron here, responding to your post. I enjoyed watching your post. Thank you for starting off with DeFore's definition to help guide our conversation. I like how you went a little bit further, though, and pointed out his idea that attitudes really do change as people gain experience with the process. Initially, that isn't always so, but positive experience, I think, will help those attitudes improve. You mentioned a training program that your school participated in called Capturing Kids' Hearts, and how some of the teaching related to building consensus. When working with staff members, not everyone is going to be on board with decisions. You mentioned how important it is for members to trust the process and engage in the process for it to be successful. And you mentioned that there will always be some that just simply do not. And that's certainly my experience as well. Even when the team has stated, when we all walk out of this room, we're going to have a common commitment, common front, that is not always the case, and there's always tends to be always some that are not as committed to the process. You mentioned that DeFore also talked about building relationships, and that leaders have to provide people with the training and support necessary for it to work well. You mentioned the RAND report indicated that consensus requires teachers being comfortable expressing their concerns, the importance of giving their input, and feeling that they are being listened to. All great points to bring out. You mentioned how these ideas were used in your school by talking about, I think it was called the weekly treatment team meetings. There is, in those, there's lots of dialogue. You create problem solution processes and a system for addressing conflicts, all great things to do. I think you mentioned this idea of prevention aspect in planning how to prevent these recurring problems, and all of these are great elements to promote consensus building and trust and responsibility. Kind of an idea I had was this whole idea of being proactive instead of reactive. Being proactive can reduce a lot of tension between leaders and their teams, their faculty teams. Often differences arise because leaders choose to make decisions before consulting their team. So having a process in place for maybe how to handle these kinds of situations, and maybe that's if it's really significant, have an emergency team meeting and pull those teachers in, pull those faculty in, and discuss those issues and come up with a plan for that. All of these, some of the problems arise because leaders don't really make a decision that reflects the appropriate level of care and concern for the teachers who are going to be affected by it. You closed your post by articulating two primary ideas. You mentioned that getting input on important decisions is the primary way that your school functions so well, which is great. And you stated that building strong relationships with all stakeholders is an essential component to your school's success. And I certainly agree that would be true for any school. I just want to underscore the importance of building those relationships. When I was a district teacher mentor, some of the most important advice that I gave to novice teachers was make sure that you take the time to establish good, positive relationships with your students and with their parents, because you're working with both. This heads off a lot of potential future problems. So the idea is similar here. When leaders take the time to build strong relationships with their stakeholders, they're creating this understanding of a common vision and mutual goodwill toward achieving those collective goals. And even going a bit further, once those relationships are established, a focus on collective or distributed responsibility helps leaders remember to loop in those stakeholders on key decisions that impact those stakeholders. A wise leader wants input on those types of decisions. And part of it is that creates more of an ownership in those collective stakeholder decisions. I suspect this is why your school is successful with those collaborative decision-making processes. I think DeFore would agree, as some of the others, Rand and Leslie and Takanya article, in that relationship building and positive experience with consensus building processes really makes it an effective and efficient way to convert the naysayers into positive members working toward those collective outcomes. Great post. I enjoyed watching and contributing some ideas. Thanks, and have a good day.